Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Farouk. You can call me Shah Farouk. Don't call me sir, please. I've been here for about 16 years now, after spending 13 years of non-work-life balance in the industry, where I spend most of my days working day in and day out in the hotel operations, where I finished my position as a chef tonan in the Western Kuala Lumpur. There are days where I don't see sunlight in my weeks. There are days that I don't see much of my kids and family too. There are days that I don't really spend time enough with my social life instead of spending at work. And I see my colleague more than I see my wife sometimes in a week. And there's a part of a day that I actually work 23 hours non-stop. So apparently that years gone by without me noticing that I actually need to have a little bit more on my social well-being. So I decided to venture into academics since I already also have a degree in culinary arts from Thames Valley University. And I'm not sure I'm passionate to teach or not. At that time, it was 2019 when I first joined here in Taylor's. Then I was just trying it out. And it's been the best place to work so far. For those who plan to join Taylor's, so in the future, you may do so. But it's not just about the salary, it's not just about the work-life balance. You also need to have some knowledge and skills to teach because Taylor students have high expectation of their lecturers. True or not? So in today's class, we're gonna do gnocchi. A little bit of introduction on gnocchi. Gnocchi is known for Italian dish, correct? Nobody can disagree with that because gnocchi, even the word itself, gnocchi, it sounds French, it sounds Italian. However, today we are not making Italian nor French, but we're making a bit of both. You see, how does French claim gnocchi while it's actually from Italy? Same like satay. The Indonesian will be mad like hell if a Malaysian come in and say satay is Malaysian, man, and you will argue non-stop. Where does it belong to? Because number one, it was not recorded. The thing about Asian cuisine, especially in the South Asia region, our cuisine are not recorded. Our what we call heritage are not well recorded, unlike the Europeans, the Chinese, and the Arabics, and also the Indians. But the problem is, with French cuisine, it's been translated. One of the most ancient cuisine in the world is the Chinese and the Indians. They're well written, but however, it's not been preached throughout the world. One of the oldest civilization of cuisine is from the Iranian, or before they call it Persian. Persian who's inventing orange juice. You think European invented orange juice? No, forget about it. It's the Persian. The American knows that Persian holds up most of the historical line of cuisine and so many things along the Silk Route. They stopped Iran from growing, and they accused Iran of having atomic bomb. So therefore, you don't see much of Iran markets and products around here for the past 10 years. They only been released for I think about 2-3 years ago. So Iran is very rich in their food culture. So gnocchi, how does it become French? Nobody knows. You need to answer. Which part of gnocchi does Italy come from? Piedmont. So they call gnocchi Piemontese. Correct. Piedmont is actually a region in southern Italy, and then it says gnocchi Piemontese. But actually, gnocchi Piemontese belongs to French. Why? Because some part of Nice, if you go the southern region towards the eastern part of France used to be Italian, used to belong to Italy. those days, those days before the World War and whatsoever. So it is actually separated by the Alps mountain. You know, the Middle European is actually separated by the Alps mountain. You know where? I'm not sure whether you know the geographical region of all these European countries. If you go to France, you will always look for to go to Mont Blanc, where they say this is part of it, part of the Alps. If you go to Switzerland, you will go to Matterhorn. You go to German, you go to this whatever. It's all related to Alps. So the French and the Italian border is actually separated by the Alps mountains. So just down below is Nice, Montana, if I'm not mistaken. No, Monaco. This you all used to be Italian, but now it's become French. So part of the gnocchi dish, the gnocchi dishes from France actually come from that region, not from Paris, not from anywhere else. So if you're talking about gnocchi in France, it comes from the bottom part or the southern area of France. Okay. However, to differentiate between the French gnocchi and the Italian gnocchi, they had two recipes. If I were to make nasi padang to become nasi campur in Malaysia, can I call it Malaysian food? Same, nasi campur, campur kan? Nasi padang is campur. So we have to differentiate. So nasi campur don't have gulai, we have curry. Actually, it's the same. They just cook differently, different spices. That's it. But in order to make gnocchi claim his gnocchi, the French, you must alter the recipe. So there is two recipes of gnocchi. One with the potato, one without potato. One is based on choux pastry, which is always the French. One with the potato is always the Italian. Understand that fundamentals, please. In Italian language, anything that finish with I, ravioli, spaghettini, spaghetti, capellini, all this E ending represents small. So if you have ravioli, raviolo, that means raviolo is a bigger part of ravioli. Ravioli is small, small pieces. For one portion, probably you have about 6 pieces. So gnocchi, there's no gnocco. There's no such thing. Gnocchi always come in small, small pieces. That's why they call it gnocchi, small dumpling, made from potato or a choux pastry base. However, with the potato, we also still add flour and egg yolk. But in the French recipe of gnocchi, it only made through choux pastry. Smart, eh, the French. So anyways, so now talk about the potato that we're going to use. There's so many types of potato in the world, and there's so many methods of making a mash. One would say peel and steep, or peel and boil. One would say boil and peel. One would say cut, boil, steam, roast, etc., etc. So there's like variables. I think we discussed about this in the early of the semester. What's the advantage between cut and cook or cook and cut for the mashed potato? These always involve moisture. So I am not really focused on building up the starch of the potato because I'm making a gnocchi. Because I also have a potato that is always high in starch content. So I don't worry too much about I don't worry too much about the starch losing its content through the cooking process. However, I still I still manage the starch by steaming it, because when you steam it, you don't really lose moisture. And by cutting it in a smaller size, number one advantage, you're gonna cook it faster. That's it. Cling wrap, please. So we're gonna steam this for 45 minutes. It's always nice to steam the potato because somehow it locks the starch. The heat will just lock in the starch and you won't lose much what you call starch content from it. So while doing that, we're gonna do another mother sauce. Another mother sauce. Which mother sauce that you haven't done yet? Hmm? Bechamel. Read your recipes, guys. Give me half onion, please. Give me half onion. That's okay. I got it. But this bechamel is something that probably you've never done before. So we bruno our mirepoix. Okay. On a traditional way to do this is by you boiling a milk, correct? The most traditional way to prepare a bechamel is by boiling a milk with what we call it. What's the onion thing? Remember the onion thing that you put inside a milk when you boil? Huh? Onion what? What is it called? Onion cloves and what? You've done this in SAM 1, I think. Onion, cloves, bay leaf. Correct. So, what's it called? Bruno them nicely. You're not going to strain this off. This bechamel, one thing about this bechamel version that you won't strain. And I'm going to show you the best bechamel ever. Say again? Onion PK, correct. Thank you very much to Google. Onion PK. So this is a bit more an advanced technique of a bechamel. And instead of making a bechamel, you're making a sauce straight away. And remember, when we go through the stage where we don't use whisk, right? We don't use whisk against starch component and also our flour. You don't whisk certain things like mashed potato, and you don't really whip something with flour inside. Example, when you're making a batter, you can use flour. Sorry, you can use whisk. But the more you agitate, the more gluten will react. If you understand how gluten react towards flour and water, you'll understand when I said you should not whisk your bechamel. Often you do, right? And even worse, you put it in a blender. Because there's roux. If you don't blend, the roux will be lumpy and your sauce will be lumpy. So it's very important that you gotta have to blend it. But when you blend your bechamel, it becomes like we call it wallpaper paste. It'll leave a trail. It becomes slightly gooey. And that gooiness is what we call a gluten reaction to the flour. So, which is not good. And you brew out your mirepoix nicely. And start sweating. Oops, sorry. You start sweating all the mirepoix. Sweat, Sweat means saute gently in a gentle heat without caramelizing or without adding any color. And you got your cloves. You can saute it together. Don't put cloves too much. You have your bay leaf too. And from there, you add in salt. Pass me some salt, please. Okay. In this case, because it's a white sauce, we don't require black pepper. So you may turn on the heat a bit, slightly. So sweat your mirepoix nicely, And this mirepoix then becomes the flavor for your bechamel, and straight away becomes the sauce for your gnocchi. This gnocchi dish is reinvented. You don't see this traditionally done in any places or any cookbook. So once you nicely add in a bit of heat, then I take some flour. So the moment your mirepoix is nice and translucent, you wait for the translucency to come in. How do you know? Overview. You gotta look. The smell of mirepoix will come in. It shows that it starts cooking, and then you see the onions turns into translucency, and the butter slowly becomes transparent. So it becomes like almost like a clarified butter. You may also add in some herbs like thyme, dill if you're serving a seafood. However, it's not required because you're making a bechamel. Bechamel doesn't have all that herbs. But if you want to do that, you may do so, but you cannot call it bechamel. You call it whatever sauce you want to call it, white thyme sauce, etc. But your base is bechamel. Understand that? This is how we sort of like modified recipes or making an advanced recipes. Because you cannot call a bechamel if it's not a bechamel. That means when you modified it, you gotta call it on a different terms and different name. You understand that straight away? Because you see that the butter starts to become transparent or clarified. Okay, then you may increase slightly on your heat, gently adding in the flour. The ratio is very simple. Is 1/100. And the most important thing right now, you have to understand that we are actually making your roux, your soft roux. And the whole idea is to cook the flour. You have to cook the flour. Right now, you don't see the lumps. Okay, the flour must be cooked in order for you to don't get that aftertaste. Okay, that weak aftertaste that you get when you have something that is not properly cooked. Then gently turn off the fire, add in your milk, and stir. While adding your milk and stir, you'll see that lumps coming in. Okay, this is adding milk to the roux. Okay, you gotta add gentle by gentle so that you don't have lumps, and you stir well by adding it. Don't worry about the see. You'll see that it's almost split, right? But don't worry about that. It will combine itself when the volume starts to come in. Why are you adding it gradually? Because you don't want to get lumps. That is why we are not doing any blending. We don't use whisk at the same time. And you see this bechamel become a proper sauce instead of something that needs to be blended or lumpy or even to strain. We don't even strain this because the mirepoix we will serve as a sauce to the gnocchi. Okay, once you get a nice liquid, Then you can turn on the fire again. And as you see now, why is it important you don't color your mirepoix? If your mirepoix is brown, you'll see it floating like that. You see it floating now. You see all the leaks floating? If you burn it, if you color it, then the whole thing becomes brown. And your bechamel won't be white anymore. Okay? So right now, what you need to wait for is stirring, and to make sure that it is actually boiling and develop its flavor. So later on, you have to remember how many cloves you put in just now? Two. So you got to remove that 2 cloves and 2 bay leaf that you put in earlier, because the cloves and bay leaf are not edible. Yes, it's good if you have a hole in your teeth for cloves. Traditional tips. If you have toothache in Europe, you cannot go to dentist because it's too expensive. Buy some cloves and get a flight back to Malaysia or Indonesia and get your dentist done. It's cheaper than going to dentist in Europe. So you got very important to stir, because if you don't stir nicely, the roux that you incorporate into the milk, the milk that you incorporate to the roux just now may get lumpy. Okay. So it needs to boil a bit. So as it boils, if you remember, I've explained to you about the granules of starch, which happens to be wheat at the same time too. It starts to open up, and therefore giving you more gluten-C. So you gotta add more milk as it boils. Okay, but it's important for it to boil in order for you to cook the flour longer as well. And now you see the sauce of bechamel is like a sauce, and it performs a nappe. Okay, very important. I may add a little bit too much of butter just now, but still okay. And you do not overboil it. Once it boils, let it cool down, ready to serve. Okay, taste it well, whether it's good or not. Oh, okay, this is the direction of the bechamel that we're gonna do today. Take a spoon and taste. And how you cover it is by putting a, what you call, a paper, and you close it and touching the sauce. Also learning pastry. It's in French. Huh? Say again? Anyone else? Huh? What is the paper that you cut into round and you put it on top of your sauce? Cartouche. You don't know. Cartouche doesn't ring any bell. You, pastry representative? It's called cartouche. You do that often when you do pastry cream. Cream diplomat maybe, but most of the time it's pastry cream or any custard. To avoid getting skin forming on top of the sauce. Because there's flour, you'll have skin forming on top. If you wrap it with a cling film, you'll have condensation. Water will go in. Nothing wrong with that, but you'll have a bit of condensation after that. But most of the time, they'll put a paper that is cut into round, and we call them cartouche. How to do your cartouche? Okay. Cartouche. Cartouche. So you fold it into four in such a way. Okay. You fold the paper into four. Either you take a scissor or you take a knife. Make sure the measurement between here and here and over here and here is the same. So you get a nice curve and you get a nice round. There's a cartouche. Some chef I saw, they put a hole in the middle. I don't know why. They do like this. I don't know why they do that. Don't ask me. Slightly smaller than it's supposed to be, but it works. Okay, there's a cartouche. And some chef, they actually also wrap after the cartouche. Then you let it cool down on the side, as it is. Okay? So, now we're making a twill mix. Can I have the scale? What is the scale? We got a scale just now? So, measure an equal amount of melted butter. This is the same twill mix that we have gone through the other day. So melt the butter nicely. We got a flour. I'm doing 25 gram of each. Where was the egg white just now? So 25 gram of egg white, 25 gram of flour, 25 gram of melted butter. Cool down the butter slightly. If you have any powder flavoring, you may mix into the clarified butter. Very quick mix. A bit of salt. So this is similar to our pastries, pastry, what do you call? Pastry twill. It's just that without sugar. And it's just that it is not playable. With the sugar recipe inside, it is playable. With only salt, it is much more what we call uh, much more dehydrated. So you can't really shape them. You can only make it straight like that. And you see what I mean? When we whisk in together with flour, you get that. That's your traditional bechamel sometimes. So we are trying to avoid that. But it's for tuile, then it's okay. So over here, we have some different silicone tuile if you want to have, if you want to use for to garnish our gnocchi. Okay. So while doing that, waiting for that, let's do this straight away. This tuile can be kept anytime, any day in the chiller. You can also do it straight away. So gently spread it off. It's very important for you to avoid what we call the spider web finishing by having a water. So have a bucket of water. Once you fill up all the placement of the tuile, right? You gotta make sure it's all filled up first. With cold water, yeah. Press gently. All right. If you have a longer spatula, it will be better. The idea is to make sure while you have that final scrape off, is to make sure you don't have what we call a spider web twill finishing in the end. Okay. So with that, you put on your twill mix and we put it in the oven. Fan off. However, the oven is at 120 Celsius. We can bake it at 20 minutes. Okay, good. Any question for now? All right. You can have a short break for 15 minutes and then come back. Okay. Thank you very much. Pass me a lighter. Ladies and gentlemen, come around, please. Okay, guys, you can start putting your potato to steam. All right, ladies and gentlemen, are you ready? Okay, this. Which one is mine? Over there. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have now completed the potato that has been steamed nicely. It's very important that your potato is crushed to the thumb. That means when you press it, it will actually mash. Okay, and be careful of the opening, and you don't see much of water content or condensation there, and it shows that your what you call your potato is nicely steamed. And with the potato miller, it's very important. We call this a ricer or a potato miller. Depends which country you come from. But generally, this is called ricer. Okay. Every time you do mesh, go through this ricer. Do not strain off using a flour sifter. And the worst part is that you strain it using a china cap. This is only for soup and stocks. Don't strain purees. Can purees is acceptable? Don't do your mash inside here, okay? Later you will menconteng arang di muka better. Understand? Understand or not? What does it mean? Menconteng arang di muka better. You know what that mean? It's peribahasa. Menconteng arang di muka better. Of myself. Of oneself. You don't know that? It's like putting a charcoal on my face. It is disgraceful. So don't strain your mashed potato using a china cap. That's what I meant. You'll bring disgrace to ADC with the apron that you have on your chest. So, using the right equipment for the right task is very important. And make sure you have your rubber spatula as well. And then, if you don't like your partner, it's very simple. You ask him or her to watch what you're doing. And when you're done, right, you tell him, you tell her, you go wash. Hey, it's fair enough, right? Since Ken is sharing with me, he is lucky number one to wash the ricer for me. So we measure this once. And you have to do this. You have to do this. All this mashing, mixing up of the mashed potato when it's still hot. Okay. You gotta whip it a bit with your rubber spatula. Make sure it becomes one. Okay. I am assuming that this is. Okay. Let's try and do this straight away. We tar it and then 131. So remember the ratio of recipe that I gave you yesterday? What was it? We have 15 gram of yolk. What's the flour again? Sorry? 60. Traditionally, they'll use the hand for this. So a bit of truffle oil, salt please. Traditionally, they'll knead it with the hand, but because we're on camera, we'll use rubber spatula, bro. So, but you can't avoid not using hand with gnocchi. And it's very important that you have your, what you call, your hands are very clean. Okay, it'll form like a paste. So in gnocchi, you'll have a paper bag version, sorry, a piping bag version where you can boil it. What's with the alarm? So either you knead it with just add in flour as in when you need. It also depends what is your moisture of your potato. Differs on the recipe. The recipe is basically just some guideline. There is a there's a ratio to that recipe of gnocchi and potato gnocchi. So one of the Swiss style is also the French style is by using a piping bag and cut it off and put it inside the boiling water. Another is by traditionally is by kneading it. Where's the clean wrap? Can we get a clean wrap, please? So whenever you're doing a flour on a working station, make sure you have a clean wrap to it. So wrap your working table with a cling film so you don't make a mess out of the whole table. Likely when you do a pasta, when you're doing anything related to a flour-based item, you would want to actually have this. So one of the way to handle it. And by having that, you have a dough cutter or even a spatula. So this is what we call a pillow shape. Which one? Oh, need to unite. Thank you. You also have another way is the fork version, where you actually cut it off in such a way, and you roll it. But this is very rustic, and it depends on how you manage this, because another way is through a piping bag. Piping bag. Piping bag betul lah. Ini ada piping bag. Anyone got a scraper? Scraper would be nice. Thanks a lot. Thank you. So we have a version of the pillow, another one with a fork. You can have a smaller fork if you want. Just put it on the side, pull it in, and another one. Another one by having it. So what you can do is by using a thumb or your finger. You push it in like that in such a way. So if your hand is not small enough, it's not big enough, so you can have your thumb instead of your small finger. So the one I prefer most is by having a piping bag. So put them in the piping bag. Strip it nicely. Give me a scissor, please. Scissor. While we're waiting for that to boil, let us look at our tuile nicely. Putting another tray on top of the tuile will help it to flatten down and make it a nice, what we call, it will stay symmetrical on it's supposed to be. Because if you were to leave it without any weight on top, the tuile may differ a little bit and may shrink a little bit here and there. So when you have a little weight or maybe a tray, just a tray on top, will make your life easier. And the tuile will be much more symmetrical. With a spatula, then you put this on top. Put it back in the oven to continue more cooking because we're doing this at 120. So it takes a bit of longer time to cook. You can do this tuile up to 185 degrees Celsius. The recipe varies, it depends what you want. At this stage, if you're doing the pastry version, you can actually shape it to whatever you want. Anyone got a non-stationary scissors? Thanks. So once you have the water boiling, this is one of the method that I've just mentioned. Have your water on simmering stage. Whether you're right-handed or left-handed, it depends on your comfort level. You pipe it in, and you cut. This is something that I used to do as a student and also as an entrepreneur when I was working in London. And we have to do this during a la carte service. Order comes in, you have your boiling water already in, your mise en place is actually piping back, and the bigger the holes, the bigger the your gnocchi is. The smaller the holes, the smaller the gnocchi is. So you're going to poach it nicely, gently, into that simmering water. Okay? And you get some sort like a pillow. But try, the tips is when you drop the mixture, right? Don't hold it too high because if it drop in, you will lose its shape. So try to put it closely to the water. So when you cut it straight on, and be careful of the heat as well on your hand, etc. So try to do this method on a hot plate that you have on the station, okay? When it floats, it shows that it slowly starts to cook, okay? And you don't put this gnocchi in you don't put this gnocchi in ice water, yeah? After you're cooking it, you gotta put it on a tray, let it cool down with olive oil, and it will reduce, cool down by itself. And later on, we're gonna pinch it with the clarified butter. So this size, approximately, once it starts to float, you allow about 1 or 2 more minutes. You cannot do too long because if you do it too long, later on your whole thing becomes very chewy. Because remember, after you cool down, you're gonna have to cook it again with your clarified butter or your butter. So once it's nicely done, put it on a tray. With once you do that, drizzle some olive oil to make sure that it doesn't stick to one another, and you're good to go. Okay, and then we have the remaining. Just boil them up so you can actually have a taste. So the beautiful part of this cling wrap method is that whenever you're done, you don't have to really scrub your whole table. Just what you need to do is just basically unwrap the whole table, and your table is as good as new. Okay, so that is why whenever you're doing something with for flour in the surface, make sure you are having a cling wrap on the table. Okay, thank you. The water boil nicely. We have some sage. Sages, no? For the garnish, to finish off, you have some button mushroom. This is optional. I'll use the cast iron pan then. That's the remaining of the gnocchi that we did. So, reheat your cast iron pan. You have your gnocchi. You have some sage leaf. Sage is one of most popular herbs to serve with gnocchi. Although you can serve with anything else, you can serve with whatever you want actually, but sage is among the most popular ones. Not some butter. A generous amount of butter will be good, especially when frying your gnocchi last minute before you serve. Once you got that done, you can put in your mushroom first. Let it saute gently. It is gentle fire, yeah? Very gentle fire. And this sauce, in order to agitate it, you can put a little bit of water. Sometimes you can smell the burn was already coming in, yeah? So be careful that you don't burn the butter. Butter mushroom cooks very fast, in this case. Some sage leaf. continue cooking your gnocchi. I will close this. That's the tuile that is ready. So if you like your gnocchi to be slightly brown, then you want to use cast iron. If you want your gnocchi to be golden yellow, then you will use a saute pan. Okay? It's important to let it fry nicely. You can put a bit of black pepper if you want. Just a pinch of nutmeg. Just a little bit of nutmeg. There we go. Nice and frying. Okay. Often chef would like the outer layer of the gnocchi slightly crispy. Like I mentioned, if you want to have it slightly on a yellow golden color, use you use the saute pan. If you want to have it on a very nice brown color in such a way, you use the cast iron pan. The cast iron pan will always give you a darker color resemblance. Okay. And now to plate up. Who's that? Yours. Oh, I think okay. We share. Okay? I cannot say I borrow because I'm gonna have to return it back. Unfortunately, I won't return it back, and I can't. So, anyways, so that's the tuile. There's the sauce. There's your plates. Okay. So once you're done with that, once you're done with that, we have our spoon to our sauce. Remember, if you do decide not to take out the cloves, not to take out the what you call the bay leaf, yeah. Remember, don't pour it into the guest's plate, okay? And it's very easy to identify the cloves and the bay leaf. So put it on the sauce. And it's normal to have an overwhelming sauce for gnocchi. Then you have your nicely fried gnocchi already. You use tweezer, you want to use spoon, it's all up to you. Huh? And don't forget that when you are doing this, the butter that you have on the pan becomes like a beurre noisette. And it's nice to serve with this drizzling onto your plate, okay? And the sage that you have is also edible and is a very nice crispy garnish to accompany with the gnocchi. That's the leaf of the sage. The component suits an appetizer, and this is actually an appetizer dish. And add in your tuile. Consider as a paprika tuile, and take your clarified butter, drizzle it around, okay, and the component of the important thing is your cheese, okay, and also to finish off, you may add in this nice little leaf of sage. Sage have that baby leaves around. Take the smaller ones that you can incorporate into the dish. And often tuile, you bake them you bake them at high temperature on a shorter period. You could also have it longer at 120 to 140, because in order to have, number one, if you have it too high temperature, the tuile can shrink as it overcooks, especially when the mixture starts to bubble up or boiling up, because inside here there's oil. Oil, if it goes above its smoking point, it starts to boil. So inside there's butter. Butter have a very low smoking point. So you may want to have what we call, you may want to have a longer oh man, you may want to have a longer you may want to have a longer period of cooking at a lower temperature, then your tuile will actually sustain its shape. That's how they do it. When you see all these people doing it through Instagram and all the social media, how you see their tuile is so nice and delicate, and to follow exactly as the stencil is due to low temperature cooking. And by saying that, this has paprika inside. Paprika burns very fast, especially at a high temperature. So you want to control that temperature before you put in too high, because paprika can go black immediately if you cook it too long at a higher temperature. Okay, any question? This tastes the gnocchi. This tastes the sauce. So you get a better direction. Taste the one that's already boiled without frying as well. and you have 2 hours to serve this. Okay, we're gonna see a dish at 7:30. Before 7:30, please. Okay, thank you very much. No, you serve your gnocchi at 7:15. Okay, 7:15. Then your duck will be at 8 o'clock because at quarter past 7, 7:15, all of you serve your gnocchi. We're gonna do a bit of evaluation, a feedback for me to record as well. So serve your gnocchi over here. We're gonna give a feedback and sort of like assessment type kind of thing. But it's not assessment lah. It's like as if I'm evaluating you. But anyways, I did evaluate you by the end of the class. It's just we have to do it in front of this camera. And your main course at 8 o'clock. Dark 8 o'clock. Okay? Great. Your butter is inside the chocolate room, by the way. Taste. Then you know how it tastes like. Guys, you gotta make sure that you cut your brunoise nicely and fine for your sauce. Your cutting method is very important for this case. Add in your milk gradually. Make sure your milk is also not chilled. All right, good. What is that? Make sure your brunoise is a brunoise. The brunoise must be a brunoise, guys. Cannot be bigger. You see my brunoise, yeah? Smaller, please. Guys, we are ready to serve. Let's do this nicely. It's time for you to plate up your gnocchi. Serve up front, please. It's service time. Ready to serve. Okay, guys, stand out front whenever you're ready. Three more groups. Guys, you need to hold up. You need to respect the timing, please. Five minutes up. Everybody take a picture of your dish. Jordan, you take a picture, remember? Good. Come. Can you call everyone? So, Jordan, number one, when you're given a respected timing, you got to push yourself and follow that timing. Because as I mentioned to you so many times, this timing is a discipline for you when you work in a restaurant. You're given a certain amount of time to serve. Your delay will make the guest wait. So in this class, apparently, I've set up the time in accordance to the standard that we require as per our module and also lesson plan. and learning outcome. So if you do not serve in time, that means you do not rush on meet up plan accordingly. So it's very important that you adhere to the timing. Don't be late. We give you 15 minutes of allowances. That is maximum. Okay, so far everyone is in the window of serving, but we can serve at 7:15, like I mentioned to you just now, exactly on the dot. It'll be nice. Okay. However, please keep on rushing. Push your timing, please. Okay. So your sauce now can split. You over reduce on your. Is it split or you have too much overwhelming of butter? Okay. But then your what you call your bechamel is not even moving. So it's actually very. It's too much of a sadness. It's curdled up, become like a pastry cream. So you need to have more liquid. Flavor wise, I'm okay with it. There's no issue. Your tuile, of course, it broke, and you only managed to serve half. With the extra time you have, you could have redone, okay, and redo the tuile to make it nicer. Don't leave with the effort of oh can lah, boleh lah. Okay, that attitude of boleh lah, that attitude of can lah, no problem ah. This is please you should not put it into your brain or in your mindset. You should settle for perfection. Don't settle for okay lah tidak apa or boleh lah. This is boleh lah concept will bring you backwards. And there's no such thing as Chicago or shortcuts. You're here to learn, and you learn carefully and redo whatever you can, please, according to the allocated time. Of course, you compromise, but when you compromise, make sure you don't serve like as if you broke the tuile. So when you have a broken tuile that you want to cover up, break it nicely so it looks like as if it never broke. You get what I mean? So you serve it in such a way like as if it's a whole piece, right? Instead of giving me the broken sides. You get what I mean? So flavor is okay, but your pan is dirty. So you have lots of black mark on the cast iron pan onto your what you call your gnocchi. Flavor is okay. This is Sandy and Cheryl, huh? Agatha. Okay. So nicely done. Tuile nicely cooked. You have your what you call your mushroom is slightly chopped, but it's good still. And overall, flavor-wise, seasoning very good. You need a bit more seasoning on that one. Your presentation is nice, but the thing is, you have your tuile upside down. It's the other way around. This is the bottom part. This is the top part. Eventually, and now it's not just you. Some of you missing out the idea of when I mentioned to you about that spider web thing. You see that? This is what I meant on the spider web, where you should have used the wet spatula during my demonstration to scrape off, to remove this part, this stuff here, which will not give you a nice outcome for the tuile. This is considered as lack of skills in tuile. So you need to have similarly to this. You see that? That edges is not sharp enough, and you have that spider web finishing. We call it spider web finishing because it's not clean nicely on the silicone. So please be careful with this. You want to have a really nice tuile that is clean without any sides, any trimmings, etc. like that. So you see that you don't see any spider web on it. And you see that everywhere. This is only by doing that wet spatula thing at the end. Okay? And to remove this after cooking or after baking, it's a horrible job. You're gonna scrape it off with a paring knife, and it doesn't make sense. That is why you must scrape it off with a spatula, with a wet spatula, before you bake it. Okay. By the way, that was the first sample. Flavor was okay. Sauce acceptable as well. Sorry. Whose was that? Sorry, whose was that? Sauce too thick, and we're missing mushrooms. Oh, I ate it already. Okay, I had all. Sauce too thick. Gnocchi can be in a better shape. Flavor-wise, I'm alright. Sukin, why you only use shiitake mushroom? What about the button mushroom? Why you only use shiitake? We have button mushroom, right? So we should have utilized the button mushroom instead of shiitake. Okay? You and who? So please, and flavor is okay. Your sauce is also too thick. When you see that nicely, it becomes, it sets. Okay? You guys good? Take care of that. Other than that, overall very good. You achieved the standards that we need to have for a gnocchi. It's just that the size, I know some of the dough that you have just now, some of you had it too light, too soft, some of it too wet. It depends on how you make it done. All right. But then again, it requires practice. It requires a lot of time for repetition of doing it for you to get used of the recipe. And to follow up the session, we also understand there is such recipe in German. It's called Spätzle. If you Google, you'll see a recipe similar to that, similar to gnocchi. It's called Spätzle in German. It's a very traditional dish for in German. It's called Spätzle, where they actually have the dough slightly wet, like what you almost have, or maybe slightly wetter. You'll have it on a tray, and they'll scrape it off with a dough sheeter, and scrape off and become like a thick noodle, but thick short noodle. They call it Spätzle, and they also have what you call an equipment or a small equipment that they use to shred the dough onto straight away to the boiling water, and is a very traditional dish in Germany, and they serve it with the cream sauce or also bechamel. All right, great. Standard achieved. Be careful of the details on the tuile. Be careful the details on the consistency and the what you call the mixture of your bechamel. Is a very modern approach of making a bechamel. Now you know that you don't have to blend the roux anymore. How you make a roux, and then you add in the milk for not to become lumpy by not using a whisk. That is very important to understand and to know as well. This is one of your mother sauce that you need to take away for today. All right. So, any question? Jordan? No. The gnocchi only required kneading as it's mixed in. That's it. You probably want to chill it down first before you start kneading it. Before you start making a gnocchi dumpling. Just now we were demonstrating, so I did not cool it down. You can also cool down the dough before you start doing a gnocchi. Anything else? Most of the recipes recommended a Yukon Gold potato for gnocchi, but we don't have Yukon Gold in Malaysia. Can get, but expensive. But so we use Idaho instead. Russet, sorry. Yes. Uh, it's very subjective. It depends how soft is your dough, because a dough can be very chewy, like what he have. A dough can be very soft, like what they have, and also what I have. Depends on how you manage it inside the boiling water and while you're cutting it. But the shape of the gnocchi will become more consistent if you hand build it instead of cutting it. Because when you cut through the piping bag, you can never get a very nice consistent shape. You become very rustic. But then again, like I said, these shapes and this method that I demonstrated just now varies from region to region, chef to chefs. Okay, and the most traditional ones are the one they did it on the wooden board, where you see, I think Grace practice with it. That's why she have the board, so I can't demonstrate it anyways. But the one that we did for competition is not a potato gnocchi, it's actually a choux pastry based gnocchi. Okay, all right, guys, thank you very much and have a pleasant evening. I bid you goodbye and please clean up before you go. Thank you.